Yo, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. It's another day. It's June 11th, 2026. It's 10:51 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you for joining. Let's begin. US and Iran trade strikes for second day, pushing Middle East closer to a full-scale war. The US and Iran trade strikes for a second day, pushing the Middle East closer to the resumption of a full-scale war. It was the third time this week that back-and-forth strikes have rattled the Middle East. The first involved attacks between Iran and Israel, followed by two rounds of fire between the US and Iran, which hit countries in the region that hosted American bases. Meanwhile, when asked about the new report that the consumer price index in May had jumped 4.2% over the last year, President Donald Trump showed how he had learned to stop worrying about inflation and simply, in his own words, love it. Trump didn't dismiss the affordability issue as a hoax that was started by Democrats as he's done previously, nor did he claim he was bringing down the cost of living. Trump family linked to resort in Albania faces opposition. A massive coastal development project linked to Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Trump, is facing growing resistance from protesters in Albania. Thousands of protesters are taking the streets in nightly protests, blowing whistles and holding up cardboard cutouts of flamingos, one of the protected migratory bird species that could see their habitats threatened by the proposed luxury resort. The government says that development on the Adriatic coast would be transformational for the former communist nation as it seeks to enter the high-end tourism market and pushes for European Union membership. But the venture, spanning an abandoned island and a nearby stretch of seafront on Albania's southern coast, has drawn opposition from environmental campaigners and critics of longtime socialist Prime Minister Edi Rama. A federal judge on Wednesday rejected a government watchdog's request for a court order temporarily blocking the Trump administration from forging ahead with a new $1.776 billion settlement fund for compensating people who claim to be victims of a weaponized government. But the judge ended a hearing by issuing a fair warning to Trump's administration: don't play possum with this court, U.S. District Judge Richard Leon told a government attorney. Leon ruled from the bench in favor of the administration, which argued that the watchdog's lawsuit is moot because acting Attorney General Todd Blanche told Congress earlier this month that the government is scraping its plans to fund the is scraping its plans for the fund. Leon, who was nominated to the bench by Republican President George W. Bush, said he accepts Blanche's representation for now. The judge's refusal to issue a temporary restraining order isn't the final word on the fate of the government's anti-weaponization fund. Leon said he will consider a separate request by the plaintiffs, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, for a preliminary injunction that would block payouts from the fund on a more permanent basis. FISA's spying program at risk over Trump's pick of Plute for Director of National Intelligence, a rare lapse in a law that allows the U.S. to gather intelligence abroad, and growing more likely after Trump resisted calls from Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill to immediately name a permanent head of the nation's intelligence agencies. Trump has doubled down on his temporary pick for Director of National Intelligence, Federal Housing Finance Regulator Bill Pulte. Even though he has little experience for the job, Democrats say they won't support the renewal of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, known as FISA, unless the president withdraws Pulte's appointment and nominates a permanent placement. The House will try early Thursday to approve a short-term FISA extension, but passage is unlikely. The Senate may follow suit, hoping to prevent what could be an unprecedented lapse in the surveillance tool. The impasse could result in limitations on what intelligence the U.S. government can collect abroad just as World Cup games begin in cities around the country and ahead of celebrations for the nation's 250th anniversary. The law expires on Friday at midnight. Iran responds to a second day of U.S. strikes by firing at Gulf states and Jordan. The U.S. and Iran traded strikes for a second day, pushing the Middle East closer to the resumption of a full-scale war. The American attack, which lasted into Thursday morning in Iran, appeared more intense and wider than the day before. But Tehran released little information on the extent of the damage. An Indian official said a U.S. attack on an oil tanker allegedly trying to violate Washington's blockade on Iranian ports killed 3 Indian mariners, underscoring the danger to seafarers. It was the third time this week the back and forth strikes have rattled the Middle East. The first involved attacks between Iran and Israel, followed by 2 rounds of fire between the U.S. and Iran, which hit countries in the region that host American bases. The new exchange of fire came as efforts to negotiate an end to the war appeared stuck, with Trump warning that Tehran would pay the price for stalled negotiations. Again, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Instagram, Studio11. Follow me on X, Studio2020. I like to say Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you on the next one.